We have a choice to make. We can decide to move forward instead of returning to the status quo. We can choose to embrace bold new solutions to the challenges we face and refuse to be held back by old ways of thinking. As much as this pandemic is an unexpected challenge, it is also an unprecedented opportunity.
Some of the messaging we can expect to hear more of in next month's throne speech as the government presses reset and outlines its priorities for a post-pandemic recovery. But will it be enough to gain the confidence of the House? Was proroguing Parliament the right move? It's Thursday, so we had to call back at issue after this very busy week. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Althea Raj. It's almost like, I feel like Monday was like 2 weeks ago when we last talked and Bill Morneau had quit. But lots has happened since Monday. Let's start with the prorogation, the decision to shut down Parliament until September 23rd. Althea, I'm going to start with you. Was this politics or was this a legitimate move to reset? Was it both?
I think there is a need to reset from the government's point of view, but this was absolutely about politics. There is no reason they could not have prorogued the House on September 22nd and allowed the committees to continue their work. And frankly, the legislation they introduced on Thursday, today, extending CERB and mostly making changes to the EI system, they could have introduced those this month in August. And instead, basically, millions of Canadians are being held hostages, possibly on this idea of a confidence vote that the Liberals may be possibly trying to engineer their own defeat. You know, the other kind of curveball in this is that we are in the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Liberals and the Conservatives and the NDP and the Bloc have agreed to a specific number of MPs in the chamber. Now, does that agreement hold? Do the Liberals send in more people? Do they send in fewer people? Do the opposition send in fewer people? The numbers game could be a very interesting curveball that would normally not be the case if it wasn't a pandemic.
How should we view the prorogation, Andrew? How should regular Canadians see that, and what should they make of it?
Well, the first point is there's nothing wrong with prorogation in principle. So sometimes it's presented as if it's a dirty trick on its own, but the context matters. As Althea said, if it was just a matter of a reset, quote unquote, or presenting a new agenda, and it's true that a lot has changed since the last throne speech and it would be in order, but it's absolutely could be the case that you could prorogue on September 22nd and come back on September the 23rd. The reason why there's this month delay is to shut down these 4 committees that are looking into the ever metastasizing WE scandal, and that makes them look a lot like the government they replaced. This is not quite as bad as the first prorogation that Stephen Harper did, which was to get out of a confidence vote that he was likely to lose. But it looks a whole lot like the second one, which was to shut down another parliamentary investigation that went into the Afghan detainee controversy. And this was the government that came in saying, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to play those kinds of tricks with it. So once again, we're seeing this government, new boss, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Well, what does that tell us, Chantal, about the Prime Minister and if anything, about how he has evolved, or maybe this was always the way? I don't know.
It tells us that the Liberals are willing to fight an election in the fall if they need to. I don't believe they will need to. What this move accomplished, the WE suspension, true enough, they could have not done it. I would argue that if this story really has legs, it's going to come back with a vengeance. That is exactly what happened with the sponsorship issue, with Parliament prorogued and then Paul Martin coming back, and it only remained as a cloud that eventually drowned out his government's efforts on every other front. So yes, there's politics involved, but what Justin Trudeau has also done, and it was within his purview, I'm not sure that I totally disagree with the notion that he changed the terms of engagement. You had the Bloc Québécois saying, we can't wait to come back to the House of Commons to put in a non-confidence motion on ethics, and the government could fall and we're ready to go in an election, albeit we don't want one. The answer is, well, if you want an election, you can have one, but it's going to be on what you want to have as a policy going forward.
Right.
And on that score, it's fair game. The timing is less fair game than the issue. I also suspect that it means a fall election has become more unlikely rather than the opposite.
Okay, we have so much to talk about, but little time, and I want to make sure we at least address the Conservative leadership race once before we get to Sunday, and you will all be back on Sunday. But do you think that the events of this past week, change anything in terms of the dynamics or the pressure or the focus for the new leader, whoever that is out of the four candidates? Is it now a more important moment for the Conservative Party, Althea?
The new leader has to be thinking about the next election on Monday. Is really what it comes down to. It is too late in the game to change the calculus in your mind. If you were trying to send a signal to the party with your choice as a leader to change your ballot, basically the ballots have to be in by 5 o'clock. I think it is tomorrow. At least tomorrow is the deadline. So it's really too late to have an impact on the race. But it does change. I think it crystallizes for the new leader. The fact that they have to go heavy on candidate recruitment, they need to decide what the party plans to talk about. There will maybe not be a policy convention before we have another election. So it basically, frankly, gives a lot of cards to the new leader.
It gives a lot of cards, but that seems to be a lot of pressure too, Andrew, to have to come up with new ideas, perhaps on a timeline that you maybe weren't expecting.
Well, absolutely. This is a party that has both historically and in recent history has had trouble defining itself. It has trouble standing up for what it believes after it has defined it. And none of these leaders are particularly going to light the house on fire in terms of bringing in new thoughts about where we're going, in particular in the economy. The Liberals are signaling they are going to take a major turn to the left. What is going to be the Conservative response to that? They have very little time and not a great track record.
Yeah, and we already saw the Prime Minister sort of speaking about that the other day, Chantal, when he talked about other parties will want to, restrain, funding, and they'll want to make cuts. And obviously, as Andrew said, the Liberals are preparing to turn on the taps here.
Well, even today's announcement on SORB and going forward on EI, I can't even imagine how the NDP could want to defeat the government on issues like that. So if anyone who wins on Sunday believes that prosecuting Justin Trudeau and his government is going to do the trick, that person, hopefully for the Conservative, would not be their leader. Because when the election comes, it's going to be about the way forward. The circumstances are too radically different from anything we've known to believe that you can win an election just by having the government defeat itself. It's going to be a lot more complicated than that. In an environment pandemically related that we don't really know all that much about yet.
And is there someone better suited, Andrew, to not be just prosecuting the Liberals and the government, but actually to be advancing an agenda that would make sense post-pandemic or into the next phase of it? Do you like how I did that? Do you like how I did that?
They're not in this race. I was going to say Mark Carney, but that's the trouble is, and I guess I'll go back and say I think Stephen Harper is partly to blame for this, for not recruiting and promoting people so that you have a richer field of candidates when the time came. So you're stuck with the people who are running now, and that's partly also a statement about where the party is. They have not wrapped their minds around a lot of the major issues, even before the pandemic that was facing us, and they need to do some of that heavy thinking.
Chantal, and then quickly Althea. Yeah, Chantal.
I think either Aaron O'Toole or Peter MacKay would be able, and there's enough bench strength and intellectual strength left in the Conservative Party for either of them to get down to presenting the country with an alternative vision that would make sense. I'm not sure that that's the advice that either of them would be getting. Yeah. But I am mindful that every time that a leader has been elected to the Alternative Party, everyone has said, well, whoever is running is not up to the job.
Last word to you, Althea, on that.
Most of them weren't.
I feel like you're kind of asking us to say who we think should be the
next
leader.
And we're not going to.
I would just say, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure with regards to the U.S. election as well. And then we're like, let's not forget, there's going to be at least 2 confidence votes, right? There's a vote on the speech from the throne, and then there will be a vote on the budget. So even if they survive speech from the throne, the opposition has the opportunity to defeat them on the budget. And the way things are going, I'm sure Justin Trudeau would much rather run an election with, Donald Trump still in office than he would with Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is suggesting, millions, in fact, trillions of dollars of public spending to beef up the American economy, to do more Buy American things, to really engage in industrial policy. And in some ways, what we're seeing is the Liberals seem to be suggesting that they too are going to be doing something similar. And in fact, when you look at the platforms of Erin O'Toole and Peter MacKay, they're also suggesting something similar, but with no numbers attached. So we may actually have just an election, if we do have an election, where it's pick whoever you feel is the best leader, and the plans kind of maybe resemble each other. Who knows?
Okay. I tried my best, but you were all too wily for me. Thank you all, and I will see you all back here on Sunday for the leadership results, and then later on the national that night. Thank you all. Appreciate it very much.